Okay, so good morning, everybody. I hope you are well. I am. This is another Monday. We are literally on the 1st of September. It's an exciting day for me because this month of September is the beginning of something I'm running with in the background. Not just myself, a whole bunch of us in our inner circles are running with this particular new opportunity. Very excited about it. I won't get into it now because there's something we're building on it, but it's an opportunity that we want to exploit among many others that we do. You know, one thing about life is that it always brings for you opportunities which can either be exploited or watched. And the funny thing about life really is always be ready because you never know what door is the next door into your biggest breakthrough in life. You never know. And there's one great saying I've come to love so much. I heard this first from a friend of mine called Coach Brian. And since then, I've kind of adopted this as my own saying. It says, when your breakthrough comes, it will either reveal you or expose you. I really like that because revealing you means you've been ready. You've been living ready. You've been living on standby. You've been focused and preparing. And you know, it's Dr. Miles Monroe, I believe, who said, success is when opportunity meets preparation. And so the difference is that the prepared people are always ready. The prepared people are always looking out and seeing. But unfortunately, those who are not ready will not have the opportunity to really exploit opportunities when they come. So revealing means you've been ready all along, you've been preparing, you've been cracking yourself in the background, you've been showing up every day as a professional, and the opportunity comes and boom, you're gone. And people think you're an overnight success or a sensation when in reality, you've been ready 10 years. The other one is expose you. To expose you means that you will be seen as the fake you are, because there's some people who have this saying, I don't like it, but I've tried to understand where they're coming from, but I don't like it. Fake it till you make it. I've never really liked that saying because if you're faking it, it means you are trying to show something you're not. I just don't think that's a good thing. Now, maybe you might be faking the look of success, but even that for me puts too much pressure on you to pretend to be who you're not. And this is the reason why some people end up with debt and all manner of pressure in their life because they're trying to put up a front of who they are not. I would rather, by far, a situation where you are genuinely who you are and you work and you show up and you're active and you're doing what it takes. And one day when the break comes, it finds you ready. It finds that you were ready 10, 15 years ago. You've been cracking your head, you've been at it. And finally, when you're exposed, when the opportunity comes, it just reveals who you've been all along. It reveals that you've been doing that all along. I mean, one of the greatest examples I can think of, he's not my favorite preacher, but I think his example is phenomenal, is Bishop T.D. Jakes. Bishop T.D. Jakes began doing Woman Thou Art Loose at least 10 years before the big break came. So when the big break came, Bishop T.D. Jakes had already been in that class, running that class for at least 10 or 12 years. So that's how life works. And so when the big break came, it just found the man ready. And I think that's what all of us should be. And that's why we show up every day on these calls every morning, Monday to Friday. You have myself on Monday, yours truly Tuesday, you have Dr. Sunshine Sylvia. Wednesday, you have the mompreneurs. Thursday, you have Dr. Nelly with Boardroom to Bedroom Prosperity for Your Soul. And Fridays, we have the New Image team. Last week, we do apologize, we couldn't make it due to the fact that the leader that was supposed to be presenting was not available on Friday. But he should be there again this week and we should be able to run. So now today I am continuing my series on bootstrapping. Let me see if I can get the title out for you guys. We're looking at the topic of bootstrapping, and today we're looking at number 12, which is, I was trying to press that, there you go. Bootstrapping 12, how to scale your business, hiring the right staff, and strategically outsourcing. This is a very, very important topic, and I'm going to delve into it just to help you understand it. Now, some years back, I bumped into a colleague of mine who is in management consultancy and got speaking about one of the major reasons so many businesses, organizations, and even countries fail. and the factors behind that. So we kind of got into one of those philosophical conversations. He spoke about what he termed the hybrid convergence point, which is in essence critical for knowledge management. Okay, this convergence has three key factors, namely people, technology, and processes. Now, what's very interesting is the percentage in which that's broken down. Listen to this. Processes make 10% of the whole thing. So let me just pause there. Oh, well, let me finish. 10% of the same is processes, 20% is technology, and the whopping 70% is people. Now, let me just talk a bit about that because that's so interesting. Processes are how things are done in business. Remember, when you start a business as an individual, you're the process, you're pretty much everything. But as you start to grow and move away from self-employed to business owner, actually your processes start to be kind of automated and kind of made more sensible and more, systemized, because it's processes that are systemized that create a business, which you can actually say now is at a stage where it could probably even separate itself from the owner, you. But before you do that, it can't, because you are the business, you are the process, you are everything. And so when you're no longer there, that business will collapse. So on processes, you really know that's all the things that make the product come to be or the service come to be, from the sales to the literal delivery of the product, and all in the process, the creation of the product, the manufacturing, whatever it is, the processing and admin, all those things basically form that particular component, which is processes. Technology is 20%, which is so interesting. Technology is the thing that's now causing or allowing people like ourselves to automate business. But it's far more than this, because technology is the biggest factor behind automation today. And when you automate your business, you make it more systemized. So technology does play a role. And then the whopping 70% is people. I mean, when I heard that, I was like, wow. So meaning, hear me well, the difference between a business that takes off, literally going from business ownership, or well, let's put it this way, going from, remember in my 4 steps to bootstrapping, we talked about the idea itself. So the first stage of bootstrapping is, what is my product? So startup. Then the next stage is validation. Who wants my product? So you're going out there to create the validation and get people who buy your product. Then the third one, which I think for me is the biggest challenge, optimization. That's where you will notice that optimization is where people really kick in. If there are no people coming to join your business and to begin to run with you in your business, that business will always remain a self-employed business, no matter how huge it is. You need a team around you. And the difference between an optimized business and a scaled business is not just systems, it's twofold. It's systems and people, a team. So the question is, what kind of team do you have around your business, your concept, your idea? And how good is that team? So finding really good team members is a really big nightmare in business. And you can ask anybody that's run a business before, that's the reality. So this idea about 70% being people shows that for any business to really grow and go on to become a multinational million-dollar enterprise from a sole trading position, they would need to master the process of hiring the right people. Okay, and also forming strategic outsourcing alliances with key businesses. Couldn't emphasize that enough. A lot of companies that could have been massive today failed simply because they had terrible staff retention strategies and a bad company or organizational culture. Organizational culture is a huge nightmare for most businesses. We even have a saying. We say that, culture will eat your strategy for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Culture is the factor behind whether a company goes on to stratospheric levels or remains mediocre. It's culture. But where does culture come from? Culture comes from the owners of the business. I think it was John Maxwell, not I think, it is John Maxwell says everything rises and falls on leadership. So the leadership determines the culture of the entire organization, and you can tell depending on the leaders. Now, a lot of times people say, oh, what about government? Agreed. Government is a big monster, and it takes far more to bring about cultural transformation in government compared to private sector, but pretty much the same. The key here just lies on the culture inculcated by the leadership. So the leadership can create a culture of success or a culture of failure, a culture of inclusivity or a culture of toxicity. Governance is being one of the biggest factors that determine how far that particular business will go. So organizational culture is huge, and organizational culture is the reason most companies do not retain people. Now, people say, now workers are thieves, workers, will steal from your business, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, I mean, yeah, but you know what? It's still going to come down to the culture. What kind of culture are you inculcating in your organization? That culture, is it a toxic culture, or do you have an open professional culture? So amateur or professional? I've seen potentially brilliant businesses go to the dogs because of the culture of the leadership. Now, let me give you a very good example, very good example. If you own a company and you start to have sexual affairs with some of the directors or workers in that company, I assure you, there's no way you're going to build a multi-million-dollar, solid, scaled business with that kind of behavior. Because once you start sleeping with people in the company, you create an extremely toxic environment. Extremely. I'm not even kidding. Like, some of your potentially brilliant people will exit on account of just the toxicity around that setup. So sleeping with the help, sleeping with the workers is one of the worst things that you could ever do. Now, that's just an example of creating toxic, environments in a given workplace. Yes, you're the owner, but really to go to that level, anyway, you get my point. So staff retention is a big sign of good cultural conditions. Now, I understand people still have to exit and go to other places and grow as individuals, granted, but a great positive environment can be sensed literally from the time you walk into a workplace. I think it was Richard Branson who said that the most important customer you have to first deal with in establishing a long-term business are your staff. Then after your staff, your actual customers. So customer care. The first customer to sell to and win are your members of staff, because loyalty is so powerful that it will override even the most adverse conditions. I always remember when Uncle Max Chichula was running Zaximba. At one point, they had no funding for months on end, yet he was able to retain some of the most brilliant members of staff. Why? Because of his attitude and how he operated as a professional. Very professional man, great man. We all look up to Uncle Max Chichula. So you realize that people like that, with that kind of attitude, were able to create great professionalism. Chibamba Kanyama, ambassador, is another good example of being able to groom and build really great people, and not just at his workplace, but also in his business. So when it comes to corporate business connections. So this idea of good organizational culture is indispensable, and it's one of the biggest issues to hybrid convergence zone. When you get brilliant talent in your company, you will grow. Many years ago, I listened to Vusi Tembikwayo speaking about the fact that when you have great talent, but you do not appreciate the talent, it's not about the money, it's about just the culture. You will lose that talent, and talent will not hang around and be abused. They would rather go somewhere else. And many times what many owners don't realize is great talent takes months to groom into great workers or great employees. Wow, remember, because the more complex the work, the longer it takes to orient them. And if you have a toxic environment, every time you're about to finish grooming someone, they're already so fed up with the whole environment, they exit. So you got to start training another person. My friends, this is how you lose gains as a company, because you're having to keep training people, keep having, and again, loyalty. Loyalty has got no price to it. When workers are loyal to your work and your brand, you will see far better progress in your business and life than when you have disloyal people. But what causes people to be disloyal? A feeling of toxicity. So it's the same reason that many churches and ministries that could have potentially grown very big in terms of numbers and influence stagnate. Interesting. Okay. That stagnation comes from the inability of those in leadership to not only spot the talent and key persons, but to retain them through better people management. The irony is that you will even hear the leadership make statements like, let them go, we don't need them. Yet that would be a key person with potential for great service within the organization. That is very detrimental, especially if you have been stagnant for a considerable period of time, over 5 years, right? So with no visible growth in any area whatsoever. So again, you will see based on this that a lot of individuals, a lot of companies have just not studied this. That's why as soon as a company is able to, you want to get an HR person, you want to get a human resource or human persons management, people management person, and where you can't, you want to outsource that as soon as possible, so that you're able to put the right environments, create the right security for individuals to feel secure about their work and about their contribution. And I tell you, when workers feel happy about being where they are, the output is far superior. Look, I like to give the example of one of the companies that I've worked with very closely, from strategy to putting in place systems, and that is Care Peak Hospital. Now, with Care Peak Hospital, why have they grown so much? And growth isn't fame. Growth is numbers that you're dealing with. That's the real growth. And how many people have they employed as staff? And how big is their turnover now? What you will realize is that with Care Peak Hospital, the culture inculcated by not just the board, but the CEO, who happens to be the lead consultant in that hospital, is very powerful. Very powerful. You see, as a result, it's very easy for a lot of people who work for that company to feel a sense of loyalty and contribution, because the owner of the business creates a great sense of camaraderie and ownership. I remember when we were doing our strategy with Care Peak, I was absolutely amazed that from day one, we've done 3 strategies with that company, 3 strategy sessions before. From day one, what did Doc do? Doc and his team had the entire membership of staff come to the strategy meeting, including the sweepers, the people that do the cleaning and the cooking, and they all came there. What I found even more amazing is that he also worked to ensure that he got uniforms for everyone. And I'm not talking uniforms. I mean, I remember when we did our other strategy, that was the second strategy session I had with him. He had suits for all of them. And I remember when we were doing the first strategy, we did a costing on suits as part of the uniform that they would have. And I'm telling you, they were bought 3-piece suits. I'm not joking, 3-piece suits. Everybody rocked up in the 3-piece suit, including drivers, cleaners. I still remember about Ken, Uncle Ken. Very interesting. All these people were there with their suits. And you could feel the energy of people. And in the meeting, everyone contributed. Everyone contributed. Now, obviously, like all other organizations of that level, he has lost a number to government openings, understandably. But he has retained some brilliant stuff, and that place has grown and grown and grown. I mean, they are really the stuff now. If you go there today, they're so different. And why? Because they were able to share so many ideas as an entire. Now imagine how much it cost the company to, well, the suits were bought before, but to put workers in a strategy session for 2 days. So the second session was a strategy session for 3 days. The first session we ever did was 2 weeks, which was 1 day each. No, 4 days. So 2 days on the first week, 2 days on the second week. That was the first session I did with them some years back. Then the second one was 2 days back to back. And then the third session was on that blew me away. 5 straight days, Monday to Friday. I remember I was with my other brother, Mr. Kafarman Joseph, and we went deep into sessions with these guys. Insane stuff. You go to CarePeak today, you can't believe what you see there. So you see that the owners took heart to everything that was done. And I sat to do the math. Besides our fee, I think they didn't, I don't think they spent less than 200,000 kwacha, because that was 36 members of staff over 5 days at the Radisson, so not at the Sarova. Okay, so they did spend a bit, but you know, the owner of the company said, you know, better to spend properly, put a proper plan and have a roadmap. So we're doing a 3-year strategic plan on the third one. So that one definitely took quite a bit to get done, but they did it. Amazing. So we're still pending to have another session with them where we're going into the whole neuro leadership training. So that's been on the budget for about 2-3 days. We'll do that. So they haven't yet gone around to it because the numbers have really grown. They're now operating 24 hours. So I don't know, they haven't. They are almost getting there. They're not yet on the 24 hours, but they're working on that. So amazing. So when it comes to bootstrapping, remember, the last phase is scaling. And when it comes to scaling, your ability to master the art of hiring good talent and retaining them, as well as forming strategic alliances in the process of outsourcing, becomes critical to your success. I've spoken a lot about the 5 factors you need to be aware of, for effective scaling of any business. These are assess and strategize, seek financing, secure your sales, invest in technology, and this last one today, which is hire the right staff or strategically outsource. So I'm going to end with this today, and that should be the end of our series. Anyone who has ever run any business will bemoan the challenge that goes with finding the right people. Like I've said before, the even bigger challenge is getting those people to do the right thing and remain consistent with it, which is where the culture comes in. So I always remember how much my mother and I would complain about the challenge. We ran a partnership for almost a decade, and each time this challenge arose, we remembered what one of our clients said to us. They said, and I quote, "Don't complain much, just sort out the challenge and patiently teach them, because if they were industrious and as resourceful as you are, they would not be working for you, but running their own enterprise." Ha ha ha. So what deep truth that statement holds. Yet, if you think about it further, aren't great entrepreneurs people who not only know how to spot and hire great talent, but also have the great leadership attribute to being able to retain and empower such great talent, such that these remain in their service, whether they are employed by them or better still, have gone on to form their own enterprises, which are now outsourced to supply the entity that they once worked for. Imagine that. So great hiring must also be flanked by great work culture, like I've said before. It is my view that running an organization on the basis of threats and fire won't create loyal staff. It never does. Okay. There are those who subscribe to the adage that it is better to be feared than loved, but I guess that makes more sense if you're a dictator, right? I suppose in a dictatorship, like I said, that rules by fear of death, that could produce some semblance of progress, but that growth is artificial and micromanaged by the person at the top. Once they're not in the equation, the whole thing crumbles. So the best by far is to use good governance tenets and the breeding of an inclusive and friendly environment instead of one of fear and suspicion. Such a positive atmosphere will compel staff to work harder and stay longer, hence being loyal. And this also avoids the hemorrhaging of good personnel and high staff turnover, which can lead to slow productivity due to training and acclimatizing newcomers to the systems and processes of business. Now, lastly, many company owners refuse to empower their staff properly because they fear that staff will run away with their trade secrets and then go start their own businesses. But whilst that may be true, I have learned one thing, and this is it. You cannot stop people from being ambitious, nor can you fizzle out their dream. If they intend to go set up their own establishment one day, they will. So instead of being so negative, why not be their mentor? Why not be somebody that teaches them what to do? Why not foster a spirit of leadership that celebrates the successes of those whom they mentored? So I want to pause there, well, close there, and basically tell you guys that this idea is so profound. The idea of getting the right people, having the right environment, having the right coaching, having the right mentoring, having the right everything. That this is what breeds the most powerful loyalty. And remember, it's not just about hiring the right staff, but it's also strategically outsourcing. So what do you want to keep internally? What do you want to let go and partner with somebody outside? You will find that you will grow your company faster because then you can focus on the core purpose of the business rather than trying to do everything yourself. This is another area where a lot of businesses fail because they get, what's that word? Spread thin. They get spread thin and you can't run effectively that way. So the only way you run effectively is to focus on your core service and provision, and then groom and mentor people to kind of pick all the different components of the business. Remember, when we talked about processes, workers, and technology as the hybrid convergence zone, remember that people form the overwhelming majority at 70%. So if you don't have people, you can't scale. It's that simple. If you don't have people, staff, and a solid system, you can't scale. So remember what really scales: systems, people. And these two must really be worked on until they converge. And once they converge well, then you will see that your business will grow in leaps and bounds. It will take a life of its own. Let me close by the term critical mass. What is critical mass? Critical mass is the idea. So it is when an idea, an organization, a movement becomes a revolution. When it goes from, when it takes a life of its own and no longer needs external fuel to grow or run. So external fuel could be you and me as owners of a business. But as long as we have to be in that business to make it tick, then it can't achieve scaling. Scaling happens when the business no longer needs you. And the only time that happens is when it achieves critical mass. Now, critical mass is a term that comes from physics, nuclear physics specifically, when you start a chain reaction. And as the chain reaction is growing, it takes an energy of its own and everything starts to burn on its own without the need for any more energy from outside. That means it's taking on a life. And revolutions do that. Remember when you have revolutions, remember Romanian revolution, remember the Arab Spring. These are situations where people just rise up and say enough is enough. And it doesn't matter what you do, you can't quell them anymore, no matter how powerful a dictator you are, no matter how repressive your organization is. When people want change, it can't be stopped. That's critical mass. Remember the Bolsheviks and the revolution in Russia that got rid of the aristocracy in the form of the czars? That exactly is what I'm talking about. The French Revolution 300 years ago. So even today, we have those things happening. Now that critical mass also happens at company level. It happens at company level. When you have grown your business, you have optimized performances. The performance of the, production. And then not only have you optimized, you've now identified powerfully the keys, the systems, and the people. And then you completely pass that on to them. Believe me, the owners of most of these banks don't even know how the banks operate anymore because they are very efficient people and systems to ensure it keeps running, complete with a board for oversight and shareholders for those annual general meetings. That, my friend, is critical mass. So in truly growing and scaling your business, I want to close by saying every one of us should pray for critical mass where the business takes a life of its own. and it completely becomes independent of you. So that even if you're not there, it makes no difference because this business has grown. I think it's Dr. Miles Monroe said that the greatest leadership works itself into irrelevance. In other words, you no longer need to be there for the business to run. You no longer need to be there for things to happen. So for as long as you have to be there, you have to be there, then you are not yet scaled to in the true sense of that word. Because a lot of people who've tried, well, let me open a second outlet, such a place, third outlet, such a place, they end up spreading themselves so thin that they can no longer work efficiently and everything just starts to sink. The quality of what they produce starts to go down, the quality of service, quality of products, because they were not properly scaled. In other words, they didn't have that internal setup. So I hope that makes sense for you guys. Have a great day. Tomorrow, Doc is here with her Mindset Change program. I will catch you next week. In fact, next week, I will be talking about something very exciting. Let me just tell you what it is. I'm going to talk about critical skills one needs as an individual to increase value and gain the gains necessary to succeed today. So I'll be looking at that topic. In fact, I might go either the quantum leap or one of these, or leadership. I'm going to look for something which I'll go into, I'll think it through. So from this point, take care, have a great day. God bless you guys.